No mortgage real estate for pennies.
Hey, thanks for joining us, everybody. This is Ted Thomas, the Tax Lien Certificate and Tax Deed Authority. Ted's going to be talking about mortgage and delinquent auctions in California. Ted, maybe just to start things off, can you explain what is a tax delinquent auction and how does it work in California?
Well, California is a very liberal state, as most of the nation knows now, and the legislature, which governs the state, is pretty darn generous. For example, the legislature allows the county to wait 5 years. They can wait 5 years before they seize the property that's having a delinquent tax problem. In other words, the owner of the property hasn't paid the tax. They don't confiscate the property for 5 years' time. So let's work our way through this. Now, the tax collection process nationwide is really designed to hold the property owner, hold them accountable for annual taxes. If they don't pay annual taxes, all the other legislatures in the United States will say, wait a minute, you didn't pay the tax, so you're either going to pay it or we're going to seize your property and sell it at an auction. So simply stated, the law requires owners to pay their property tax or forfeit the property, okay? Now, the California legislature makes the rules which they want to make, and they're referred to as statutes. So when you talk about a rule, that's a statute. All right, so the rules, the statutes, once they make them, they push them down to the Board of Supervisors or the treasurer and the tax collector, and that's where they're mandated for enforcement. So in the event the property owner doesn't make their property tax bill, well, guess what? The county's going to make a claim, but the county is not going to continue and do the actual seizing of the property for another 5 years. Now, can you imagine? This property can stay in default for 5 years, and then the treasurer, tax collector can start that foreclosure process, or what we call a confiscation process. Okay, now, folks, I'm not an attorney. I'm certainly not a broker. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm an investor. I'm a guide. I'm a teacher. Student investors need to seek out the advice of experienced attorneys and other advisors.
Well, will the tax sale actually just wipe out the mortgage, Ted? And how do you know that? I mean, how do you know it does that?
Okay, well, you always know the answers to your questions by going to the county website and looking there. If you don't get it there, then you can go to the state statutes. But I'll give you the straight answer now. A lot of people are confused about this, but in California, generally the lenders use a deed of trust document rather than a mortgage, okay? So if it's an installment sale that someone's paying, they're paying an installment sale on a deed of trust loan. All right, so that deed of trust loan, you might want to call it a mortgage, is deleted, it's wiped out, it does not survive a delinquent tax defaulted auction. So your answer is simple form. When the auction takes place, it's going to wipe out. If it's a deed of trust on there or a mortgage, it's going to wipe that out. So that makes people feel pretty darn good. All right, so the point is the loan has been cleared from the property. That does not mean that all of the encumbrances are off the property. It means the deed of trust is off the property. All right, so newcomers, they're just starting out, and new investors, they're totally overwhelmed and can't believe that someone has wiped out the deed of trust, okay? Well, it's the legislature that makes the rules, not Ted Thomas. The legislature makes the rules. They push it down to the local government. Doesn't matter whether it's San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego. They push it down there, and then those counties are mandated to wait 5 years before they can go ahead and enforce the rules and go ahead and try to take that property. All right, so property owners, whenever they're in a situation, they're going to get what's called due process of law. Now, I'm not trying to give you a legal lesson here, but what the county has to do if they're going to take a property is they have to send notices of default. That's called due process of law. So that notice of default will tell that owner, you haven't paid your property tax in so much time, we're going to confiscate the property. Now, remember what I said earlier in the video. In California, they're going to wait 5 years before they take that property. So due process of law is a written notice. Everybody gets that same written notice. The bank gets that notice. Anybody has a judgment on the property gets it. Everybody gets a notice because the county has to enforce the law and follow exactly what the legislature said. So sometimes on a commercial property, for example, what will they do? They'll have a process server. That means an individual will go out and serve that notice of default, just so they don't worry about the post office not working or someone claiming that they didn't get it. All right, so the treasurer will follow the exact process that the legislature tells them. So the legislature tells them you have to wait 5 years before you can go through that. You must go through that whole due process of law before you can confiscate that property.
Now, are there any differences in how residential and commercial properties are treated in these auctions when it comes to mortgages?
Well, if you have a mortgage or a deed of trust in California, they're all treated the same. So agriculture, commercial, single-family homes, they all have to go through the due process of law. All right, so due process of law applies to everyone. It's created by the state, and then it goes down to the county for all the enforcement. So everybody's going to get notice. So due process of law, it's been around for decades. People outside the real estate business have no idea what we're talking about, but it's just a way to give notice, and everybody's required to get notice, so there's no surprises.
Well, if somebody's at a tax deed sale, Ted, how do they identify properties with mortgages or other liens that are up for auction?
Well, that's a great question. If you're at the tax deed sale and you're trying to figure anything out, it's too late. So don't do anything. Put your hands back in your pocket. Make sure you don't spend any money. Because if you're at a tax deed sale and you're trying to figure this out, it's too late. You have to go to the county records to research tax defaulted property. I don't care. I know you're a bargain hunter and you want to be at that auction. Everybody wants to be at the auction. But just as important as walking on the property and looking at the condition, well, you need to research the county record. This is a real serious business, okay? Now, understanding judgments, claims, mortgages, if you don't understand that, you don't want to be at the auction. So, reading these rules is one thing. Understanding them is another whole thing. Now, that's why attorneys go to school for another 3 years after college. So experienced and skilled attorneys earn their money. Investors need to ask the right questions, and they need to get the answers before they ever get to the auction. So a skilled attorney really earns his money, so you need to get answers from that person. Okay, now without research, without due diligence, you don't want to be at an auction. Tax sale investing is risky if you haven't gone and found out, is there liens or judgments still on that property? So some people go and raise their hand, they buy a property. Well, what happens? What if it's got another lien on it from the federal government or someone else? Okay, when you buy at an auction, it's caveat emptor. What's caveat emptor? Latin term for buyer beware. How are you going to get by this buyer beware stuff? Well, that's why you want to take your time, make sure that you've got an attorney to help you go through those county records. You don't want to just buy something and then pray that it's going to work out. I can assure you, prayer is not a good business strategy.
Well, Ted, in your over 30 years of doing this, have you ever seen people make a purchase in California and then the mortgage was just wiped out?
I've seen hundreds, I've seen thousands of mortgages and deed of trust wiped out. All right, the treasurer of a county, people don't realize this, the treasurer of the county has power. The treasurer has what they call statutory power. I'm not trying to give you a legal class, but it's the only way to explain it. The statutes give the treasurer power to change the rules, to change the pricing, to do what they think is best for that county. So let me give you an example. First of all, I'll give you a big example. Start out with Los Angeles. They'll have 1,000 to 2,000 properties at any one auction. Every one of those auctions, when it takes place, the treasurer will wipe out, delete, extinguish, remove the deed of trust loan. The treasurer can do what they want. Now, let me give you an example. So Renee, my savvy student, shows up, understands all the things we're talking about now. At the close of the day, the auctioneer is all finished, but they still have 1,500 properties. They're in San Bernardino, where they started with 3,000. They now have 1,500 properties. Nobody's bid on them. What is the treasurer going to do? So what the treasurer simply said is, well, we're going to have another auction, folks. In 90 days, we want you to all come back. All right, now, here's what the treasurer has. The treasurer has power, like I told you. They have the power of sale. You can write the words down, power of sale. All right, power of sale means they can change the pricing. So my friend and investor, he's savvy, goes back to the auction. They got 1,500 property. The treasurer took all the property values, and kept them the same, and then put the starting price to $100. How would you like to show up at an auction? Every property is priced at starting bid at $100. Well, let me give you the bottom line so we get finished the video. But the point is, he didn't get a property for $100, but he did get a property for 6 cents on the dollar with no mortgage, no easements on it, no zoning restrictions, no trust deed on it. Okay, bought it for 6 cents on the dollar. Property was valued at $150,000, and he paid $9,000. That's 6 cents on the dollar. How often would you like to buy a property for 6 cents on the dollar?
If you're watching this video and you got a question for Ted, leave it in the comment section below and you will get an answer. You know, Ted, it would be nice if there was a list so everybody could know when and where these auctions are happening.
Well, the big deal about tax defaulted properties is the auction list. If you don't have an auction list, you can't even start out. So what I've done is I've created an auction list that's online. What you can do is you can sit at your desk and you can move a cursor around and go to any state and find out how many auctions are going to take place. And then when you find out how many auctions are going to take, it'll even take you to every single county and do that. Now, I don't have time in this video to tell you more, but it's right below me and you can look and you'll find out.
It's right there in the description column. Click on it and take advantage.